I've spent my life cleaning the offices of the elite, learning truths that could ruin dynasties. Now, my own daughter is trying to ruin me. Over Sunday brunch, Linda casually pushed legal papers across the table, stripping me of my autonomy. She looked at me with a greed I didn't recognize and whispered, "Don't make this difficult, Mom." She wants my house and my dignity, but she didn't notice the campaign logo in her bag that links her to my old boss, Senator Sterling. She has no idea what I'm holding in this locket. Listen to the end to hear how I handled it, and subscribe to hear more of my journey. The power of attorney lands on my lace tablecloth like a verdict. I hear it before I see it, the heavy, cream-colored pages hitting the cloth with a thud that rattles the fine china, sends a tremor through the Earl Grey in my cup. Linda doesn't wait for me to set down my tea. She doesn't clear her throat or draw a breath. She simply slides the document toward me with one manicured finger, the way you'd push a bill across a counter to someone who can't afford to argue. "It's signed, Mom," she says. Her voice has that particular quality I've heard 100 times in 100 grand foyers, the practiced lilt of someone who has already decided the outcome and is only here to manage the paperwork. I've heard it from estate attorneys and society wives and men in $5,000 suits who referred to me by my first name without asking permission. I never expected to hear it from my daughter at my own kitchen table, on a Sunday, with the good china out. I looked down at my name. Martha Ellen Greer. Printed in blocky, impersonal font, the kind a machine produces because a machine doesn't hesitate. The ink smells of fresh toner and something else, something I can't name but recognize the way you recognize the smell of smoke before you see the fire. The room doesn't spin. It shrinks. The yellow walls press inward. The window over the sink narrows. 40 years of waking before dawn, 40 years of other people's floors on my knees, 40 years of saving every penny and clipping every coupon and never once asking for anything I hadn't earned, all of it compresses into the 2 inches of space between my name and Linda's looping signature on the line below. This isn't a suggestion. This isn't even an ambush. This is a foreclosure. I don't breathe. I just stare at the black ink bleeding into the white fibers of the page while my daughter watches me with the patience of a woman who is very sure she has already won. I've already called First National. She leans back in the chair, my late husband's chair, the one with the worn armrest, and crosses her legs in those ill-fitting designer slacks. The suit is expensive, I can tell from the fabric. I spent 15 years in rooms full of expensive fabric, and I learned to recognize what money looks like when it's borrowed versus when it's earned. Linda's suit is borrowed. Everything about this morning is borrowed. Your checking and savings are frozen for your own protection. She smooths the crease in her slacks with 2 fingers, not looking at me. You've been forgetful lately, and we can't have you wandering into a scam. The tea turns to ash in my mouth. I don't set down the cup. I hold it. My hands, calloused at the knuckles, browned and steadied by 40 years of bleach and floor wax and lifted furniture, these hands that never once shook when I needed them, begin a traitorous tremor under the table where Linda can't see. I press my thumb into the handle of the china cup until the trembling stops. Forgetful. I have never once forgotten a thing that mattered. I remember the exact amount in that checking account, $4,218. I remember the savings, $11,600. I remember the routing numbers. I remember the branch manager's name. I built those numbers the way you build a wall, brick by brick, in the years after the funeral, in the years after the government sent a folded flag and a letter of condolence and nothing else. And now they are in a vault I no longer hold the key to. My hands settle beneath the table. I let the trembling go. I take a breath I do not allow Linda to see. I reach for my napkin, the linen one, the Sunday one, the one my husband's mother sent as a wedding gift, and as I do, my eyes catch a glint of gold from the open handbag on the chair beside Linda. She's set it there carelessly, the way people set down things they consider safe, unnoticed, invisible. The way people set things down in front of the cleaning woman. I see it between a folded pocket square and a stack of envelopes with the red past due stamp visible at the edge. The pin is small, no bigger than a quarter, but the blue and gold is unmistakable. The S is styled like a laurel wreath, the letters clean and authoritative. Sterling for Senate. My stomach drops the way it does when you miss a step in the dark. I know that logo. I know it the way I know the scent of this kitchen, the way I know my own name. I spent 15 years cleaning the mahogany desk it sat on, a framed campaign poster in the corner study of a brick colonial on Harwick Road, right next to the liquor cabinet and the locked bottom drawer I was always specifically asked not to touch. Senator Gregory Sterling. 30 years in office. 3 investigations, never indicted. The kind of man who shakes your hand at a charity gala and doesn't learn your name. Sterling doesn't do charity. Sterling doesn't do anything unless there is something in it for Sterling. Linda is broke. I know that, too, have known it for longer than she realizes, because Linda underestimates what I notice. The car payment she can't make. The credit card statements she stopped hiding 2 years ago. The gambling debt she thinks I don't know about, because she handled it in Atlantic City and believed distance equaled secrecy. She's not just desperate. She's been recruited. And I know exactly what Sterling recruits people to do. My smartphone sits by the sugar bowl, close enough to touch. I need Ed. I need 30 seconds and a dial. That's all. I move my hand toward it, a casual shift, the way you reach for the cream, and Linda's hand shoots across the table like a trap springing shut. Her fingers clamp around my wrist. The grip is a vice. Her knuckles go white at the strain of it, and for a moment I see something flicker behind her eyes, something hollow and frantic and very, very hungry. The doting daughter mask she walked in wearing doesn't slip. It falls. What's underneath is not a stranger, exactly. It's something worse, my daughter's face arranged around a greed I don't recognize. Her fingernails find my skin at the pulse point. The pain is sharp and specific, a bright ring of pressure right over the place where my heartbeat lives. A physical line drawn across my own kitchen table. Don't, Mom, she hisses. I look down at her hand on my wrist. I look at the nails she had done recently, a French manicure, expensive, the kind that doesn't chip, pressing into my thin skin. I think of all the times these hands bathed her, fed her, braided her hair before school. I keep my face empty. Of course, dear, I say softly. I was only reaching for the sugar. She doesn't release my wrist immediately. She holds it for a moment longer than she needs to, long enough for the message to land, and then she lets go and leans back with a smoothing of her expression that she thinks passes for composure. You're confused, Martha. She uses my name now, not Mom. That's deliberate. I notice everything. People will understand. Everyone already does. She brings her voice down to a register she must practice, low and intimate and threaded with false concern. Her face is close enough that I can smell her perfume, something floral and expensive and completely failing to mask the sour edge underneath it. If you fight this, the state steps in. They'll have you an award before the sun sets. She lets that sit. She lets me feel the shape of it. But if you cooperate, we keep this in the family. You stay home. We manage things together. It's just care, Mom. That's all this is. She calls it care. I hear the sound of a cell door latching. She's been watching me for signs of fear, cataloging my reactions the way a hunter reads the ground. She thinks she knows my terrain. She thinks the word ward will hollow me out, because she knows my deepest fear, not the fear of dying, but the fear of disappearing while still alive. Of becoming a name on a wristband instead of a woman in a kitchen. Of having my mind disputed until I can't trust it myself. She knows exactly where to aim. And I let her believe the arrow landed. I look into my daughter's eyes. I look long enough to be sure. Long enough to search for something familiar, something that remembers Sunday mornings before the greed, before Atlantic City, before Sterling's gold pin ended up in her handbag. I look for the girl who used to fall asleep in my lap during summer thunderstorms. She isn't there. What sits across this table is a transaction. A woman who has itemized me, my home, my savings, my legal standing, and found me worth more gutted than whole. She has sold the lead into my life, the 40 years of it, to pay for her own failures. And she has done it in my kitchen. On a Sunday. With the good china out. The grief starts to swell. It comes up from somewhere low and old, thick and suffocating, the kind of grief that has nowhere left to go. I feel it rise. And then I push it down. Not because I don't feel it. I feel it in every calloused inch of my hands and every aching joint of my fingers. I push it down because I have been in rooms like this before. I have been the invisible woman in the corner of more boardrooms and parlors and private dining rooms than Linda has ever seen. I know what happens to people who show their wound in front of a predator. I am not a victim at this table. I am the woman who knows where the creeks are. Underneath my cardigan, the locket lies against my sternum. It's been there so long I don't feel it most days, just part of the weight of myself, like the wedding band I still wear on my left hand. But now it's a branding iron. A single point of heat against my skin, steady and real. Linda doesn't know about the key inside. She's seen the locket 1,000 times. She's heard the story, a keepsake from my husband, a gold star relic, sentimental. The kind of old woman trinket a daughter considers and dismisses in the same breath. She has never once asked what the key opened, because she assumed she knew, assumed it was a memento box, a cedar chest, some dusty repository of sentiment that had no bearing on anything that mattered. She's wrong. The key opens a safety deposit box at the downtown branch of Meridian Trust, not First National, where Linda has already made her calls. A box I opened the same week I started cleaning Sterling's house on Harwick Road. A box I have maintained for 23 years, paying the annual fee out of the grocery envelope, never mentioning it to anyone. Inside is a Polaroid. Sterling thought I burned it. He made that assumption because he had already made the larger assumption, that I was furniture. That the woman on her knees with the floor wax had no inner life, no foresight, no understanding of what she was looking at when she saw it. He stood in that study in his shirt sleeves and made a phone call he thought was private, and afterward he slid a photograph into the unlocked bottom drawer of the mahogany desk, and 3 weeks later the drawer was empty, and he never thought to ask the cleaning woman. 23 years. I have waited 23 years for this to matter. As long as this locket stays around my neck, I am not finished. The trembling in my hands, the real kind, the kind that started with Linda's grip on my wrist, I have been managing for 10 minutes now, keeping it below the table, keeping it out of her line of sight. Now I let it come. I let my chin drop slightly, let my head loll just a fraction to one side, not all the way, not theatrically, just enough. A woman who is very tired. A woman who may have missed something important. The blue pills, I murmur. I let my voice go thin, the edges fraying. Linda, I think I missed the morning dose. Everything is. I blink twice, slowly. Blurry. I let my arm go limp. I watch her face. There it is. The tension in her hand changes. The white-knuckled grip of a woman trying to control a situation shifts into something else, something that moves through her shoulders and settles at the corners of her mouth in a shape I recognize. Smugness. Satisfaction. The particular relaxation of a predator who believes the prey has stopped running. She lets go of my wrist. I'll get you some water, Mom. She stands, smoothing her slacks. Just stay put. I watch her walk to the sink with my eyes soft and unfocused. I count her steps. She has her back to me. I don't move. I don't reach for the phone. I simply look, the way I have been looking my entire working life, at the things people leave unguarded when they believe no one important is watching. Her heels. She's wearing those pointed leather things, the kind designed more for appearance than for actual walking. And caked along the back edge of both heels, dried in the creases of the sole, is a reddish-brown clay. Not the dark topsoil of a garden or the pale grit of a construction sidewalk. This is that particular iron-red clay, the kind that stains. The kind that comes from one place, at least in this county. The Grandview Development Site. I know that site. Everyone in this neighborhood knows it, the old VA clinic property on the east end of Millbrook Road, where the community has been fighting Sterling's rezoning application for 18 months. The site where his contractors have already broken ground twice, quietly, before the permits cleared. The site where that red clay sits in 12-foot piles along the perimeter fence, waiting for something to be demolished. Linda has been there recently. Not a drive-by. These are the heels of a woman who walked the property. The connection settles into place with the quiet certainty of a deadbolt sliding home. They aren't just after my money. They're clearing the neighborhood. Linda is still at the sink. I have perhaps 45 seconds. I don't look at my smartphone. I look at the pantry door. My mind does what it has always done in the houses of other people, it maps. 3 steps to the pantry door. From more to the back corner, behind the flour bin, to the loose floorboard my husband and I prized up on a warm Saturday in 1987. He was methodical about contingencies. Just in case the world goes sideways, Marth, he said, fitting the board back into place with a little wooden peg he'd shaped himself. He said it the way he said everything, quietly, practically, as though the world going sideways was simply weather you prepared for. Under that board, a spare set of house keys. A small notebook in a Ziploc bag. And the burner phone Ed gave me last Christmas, still in the original packaging, because I truly thought, that the gesture was sweet but unnecessary. I was wrong about that. I have been wrong about several things. But I am not wrong about this. I don't need Linda's permission to move. I don't need my frozen accounts or my confiscated phone or my daughter's goodwill. I need the shadows I've lived in for 40 years, and I know this house's shadows the way I know my own face. She comes back with the water glass held in both hands, a gesture of care so practiced it might have fooled a different woman. She sets it down in front of me with a little pat on my hand, 2 fingers, brief, the kind of touch you give something fragile that you're not quite sure you want to touch at all. Thank you, dear, I say. I take a sip. I make my eyes wide and a little lost, the way I've seen genuine confusion look in other women my age, in grocery store lines and waiting rooms. The slight tilt of the head. The small delay before the hand responds to the brain. The papers. I set the glass down carefully. I'll look at them after my nap. It's all so much to take in. I watch her shoulders. There, the drop. The particular release of a person who has been braced for a fight and suddenly isn't getting one. She smooths her jacket. She picks up her handbag, the one with the sterling pin and the overdue envelopes, and hooks it over her arm with the practiced ease of someone already halfway to the car. That's good, Mom. Her voice is warm again, the professional real estate lilt reinstated. You rest. I'll check in tomorrow. She's made her calculation, the dementia is progressing on schedule. The prey is cooperating. By playing the invisible woman one more time, I've just bought myself the only thing that matters right now. Time. The front door shuts. The click of the latch travels down the hallway and reaches me in the kitchen as something close to silence, the particular quiet that follows the exit of a person who has taken up a great deal of space. The air in the kitchen feels different. Less pressurized. I sit with it for a moment. The steam has gone out of my tea. The cup is lukewarm now, the Earl Grey gone flat. I look at the lace tablecloth, still displaced slightly where the power of attorney landed, the corner of the document visible beneath the edge of the sugar bowl where Linda slid it. I look at the scuff marks her pointed heels left on my lemon-waxed floor. Pale grooves in the finish, 2 parallel lines from the table to the door. Every mess leaves a trace. I don't cry. The grief is still there, will always be there, the particular grief of a mother who has just looked clearly at her child and seen something she cannot unsee. But grief is a thing I know how to carry. I have been carrying grief for decades. I carry it the way I carry my arthritic hands, carefully, without complaint, in full use. I take the locket between my fingers. The gold is cold at first, always cold, even after hours against skin, which I have never quite understood, and then it warms in my palm. I hold it without opening it. I don't need to see the key right now. I just need to feel it. Outside, the afternoon light is shifting. The sunlight through the kitchen window hits the floor at a low angle, and I can see every scuff, every print, every trace of what happened here this morning. I could clean it in 10 minutes. I've cleaned worse and less. But not yet. First I count the seconds until dark. Until the house settles into its evening sounds, the click of the baseboard heat, the creak of the stairs when the temperature drops. Until the neighborhood goes quiet. Until I can move through my own home like I have always moved through the homes of the powerful. Like I was never there. The wall phone receiver is cold in my hand. I lifted it out of habit, the way I have lifted it every morning for 30 years, the familiar weight of it, the way the coiled cord swings slightly when you take it off the hook. My fingers know the shape of it before my eyes register anything is wrong. Silence. Not the brief delay of a connection being made. Not static. A flat, dead void, the kind of quiet that has no floor to it. I pull the receiver away from my ear and look at it stupidly for a moment, the way you look at a light switch that doesn't work, a half second of not believing the thing before belief settles in. I follow the cord down to the baseboard with my eyes. It runs in its usual path along the painted trim, and then it stops. The end of it lies on the floor like a limp tail, the copper wires exposed at the cut, bright orange against the gray insulation, frayed and raw, like something that's been hurt. Clean cut. Scissors, maybe, or wire cutters. Deliberate. I move to the front hall and look at the router on the little shelf beneath the coat hooks. The green light is gone. The whole unit is dark, no LED blinking its patient signal, no quiet electronic hum. I press the power button out of reflex, knowing it won't matter. It doesn't matter. I stand in my hallway in the silence of a house that has been severed from the world and understand, with the clarity of someone who has cleaned up after enough disasters to recognize one in its early stages, that this was planned before Linda sat down at my kitchen table this morning. The phone. The accounts. The internet. She moved through the checklist in her mind while she drank my tea and wore my husband's chair and told me I was confused. My sanctuary has been turned into a cage. I press my palm flat against the cool plaster of the hallway wall and stand there for 5 seconds, breathing. My late husband used to say, "Feel it for 5 seconds, then move." He was talking about fear in the field. He didn't know he was talking about me, in this hallway, at 72. 5 seconds. Then I move. The pantry smells the same as it always has, dried herbs and flour and the faint sweetness of old cereal boxes. I count the steps from the door to the back corner automatically, 3.5, and then I'm down on my knees beside the flour bin. My knees crack. Both of them, a sound like green wood splitting. I ignore it. I wedge the handle of a butter knife into the narrow seam along the left edge of the floorboard, the one that doesn't sit quite flush with the others, and apply pressure the way my husband showed me, not a pry, a twist and a lift, working with the wood, not against it. The board yields with a familiar dry groan, like an old door on a cold morning. The gap underneath is exactly as I left it. Dusty. Dark. Small. The kind of space you'd walk over 1,000 times and never think to look at. My fingers find the keys first, the spare set on the brass ring, cool and heavy. Then the burner phone, still in its small rectangular box, sealed in the Ziploc bag Ed tucked it into before he slipped it into my Christmas stocking last year with a look I chose not to examine too closely at the time. "Just in case," he said, sounding exactly like my husband. I powered it on. The screen flares blue-white in the dimness of the pantry floor. 3 bars of battery. Not much. Enough. I wrap the phone in the dry dishcloth I keep folded on the lower shelf, tuck it into the deep pocket of my cardigan. The keys go in the other pocket. I press the floorboard back into place with the flat of my palm until I feel the small wooden peg my husband made catch its groove. I stand up slowly, one hand on the pantry shelf for balance, my knees sending their usual opinions upward along my thighs. The house is still silent around me. But I am no longer just the woman inside it. The knock comes at 10:20, sharp and rhythmic, the kind of knock designed to signal authority rather than request admittance. I know before I reach the foyer. I know from the tempo of it, not a neighbor's knock, not the postman's perfunctory tap. This is the knock of someone who expects the door to open. I look through the sidelight window. Dr. Schmidt stands on my front step in a dark wool coat, his leather briefcase held at his side like a weapon at port arms. He is adjusting his silk tie with one hand, a gesture of practiced nonchalance that fails to conceal the watchfulness in his eyes, the way they move across the visible portion of my foyer before I've opened the door, cataloging, assessing. He has the soft, well-maintained look of a man whose income has always been comfortable. His aftershave reaches me through the glass, something heavy and clinical that puts me in mind of hospital corridors. I open the door 3 inches. "Martha, dear." His smile deploys like a stage set, assembled in the right configuration without any warmth behind it. "Linda called this morning. She's so worried about your recent episodes." He tilts his head slightly, an expression calibrated to project gentle concern while his eyes do something else entirely, move past me into the house, taking stock. "May I come in?" He doesn't wait for the answer. He puts one hand lightly on the door and his shoulder does the rest, and then he is standing in my foyer smelling of expensive chemicals, and the door is open behind him. I step back. I keep my face soft and slightly uncertain. I let my hands stay loose at my sides. "Of course," I say quietly. "Come in." He takes my dining room as if he's been given it. Sets his briefcase on the table, opens the clasps with 2 crisp snaps, removes a printed form attached to a clipboard. He sits in the chair at the head of the table, my husband's end, with the unhurried comfort of a man in his own office, legs slightly spread, jacket unbuttoned, the pen already in his hand. "Just a few simple questions," he says, and the smile comes back on. "Nothing to worry about." He asks me to name the current president. He asks me to count backward from 100 by 7s. He asks me to draw a clock face showing the time as 11:10, and he slides a blank sheet of paper across the table for this purpose, as though he's come prepared for the specific test. I sit across from him and become a statue. I keep my lips pressed together in a thin, neutral line. I look at the paper without touching it. I look at the pen in his hand without responding to it. I give him exactly what he's fishing for, a stillness that can be annotated as withdrawal, a quiet that can be labeled as effect. I watch his pen move across the form in small, precise strokes. I watch him check boxes that I cannot read from this angle but understand in their architecture. He mutters something under his breath while writing, almost to himself, in the manner of a man who has performed this particular procedure enough times that he doesn't require an audience. Patient is non-responsive, demonstrating significant catatonic features. I understand the machinery of what he's building at my lace tablecloth. I spent decades in the rooms of men like him, men who arranged the documents of other people's lives with the comfortable ease of someone who has never once been subject to the arrangement. He isn't looking at me. He's looking at the form. I am not a patient to him. I am a set of checkboxes with an address attached. He is building the casket for my legal personhood, and he believes the casket's occupant is already too confused to object. I sit with my hands in my lap and let him build. He's been at the table for 40 minutes when I allow myself a slow, uncertain breath and speak. I need to check my roses, I say. The aphids have been terrible this week. I make my voice a thin, shaky reed, not dramatic, nothing performative, just the slightly drifty quality of a woman whose attention has moved toward the garden and away from the proceedings in her dining room. I make my eyes soft and mildly beseeching. Schmidt looks up from his clipboard. He checks his watch, gold, heavy, the kind that's designed to be noticed. He sighs through his nose with the barely concealed impatience of a man whose schedule has been mildly inconvenienced. Of course, he says, in the tone of a pediatrician humoring a child. 5 minutes. I shuffle to the back door. I use the back door shuffle I've been perfecting in my head since he walked in, measured, slightly unsteady, the gait of a woman older than I actually am. The door screen bumps closed behind me. The garden air hits me in a rush, thick with the smell of late-season earth and the sharp green of boxwood and the sweetness underneath from the rose beds along the south fence. After Schmidt's clinical aftershave, it feels like surfacing. I pull a real breath in, slow and deep, and look toward the back fence line. Ed is already there. He's standing partially behind the weeping willow, his stocky frame in the familiar tactical vest over a flannel shirt, his bald head bare. His eyes are already moving, checking the back windows of the house, checking the adjacent yard, checking the angles. Retired for 15 years, and he still clears the room before he enters it. I walk to the fence, unhurried, keeping my trajectory casual in case Schmidt is watching from the dining room window. She's moving fast, Marth, Ed says, low and quiet, before I've reached the chain link. He doesn't waste words. He never has. Sterling fast-tracked the Grandview demolition. His voice stays below the fence line, a gravel murmur. VA clinic is slated for decommissioning by Friday. And the brokerage handling the land transfer? He pauses, and I see something move in his eyes, a reluctance, a weight. L. Miller and Associates. That's Linda. I don't speak for a moment. I stand at the chain-link fence in my garden and feel the information settle into my chest like a cold stone dropped into still water. I feel the ripples. My daughter. Not just a pawn Sterling recruited to manage an inconvenient widow. Not just a desperate woman who made bad choices and ended up leveraged against her own mother. Linda is the instrument of the transaction. She is the mechanism by which the land beneath the VA clinic, the clinic that treated my husband's lungs after he came home, transfers into Sterling's portfolio to become whatever glass and steel monument to his greed he's already permitted and priced and sold to investors. She isn't just stealing my house. She is selling the ground beneath the feet of the men my husband called brothers. I breathe through it. In and out, slow and measured, the way I breathed through the news of his death, through the folded flag, through every night in the first 2 years after when I was certain the grief would simply swallow me whole. I breathe through the image of my daughter in those mud-caked heels standing at the edge of a demolition site, signing documents. All right, I say. Ed looks at me. He has known me for 11 years, since he moved in next door after his wife passed. He has never once looked at me with pity. He's not looking at me with pity now. He is looking at me the way one soldier looks at another when the situation has become clear. All right, I say again. Ed reaches through the fence. His thick fingers are steady as he taps the screen of my burner phone, which I've pulled from the cardigan pocket. The red icon. Right there. He guides my thumb to it. That's a voice memo. Tap it once to start, once to stop. It'll run in the background with the screen dark. How long can it record? Long as the battery holds. Keep it charged overnight when you can. He looks up from the phone. Here's what you do. When she starts in on you, and she will start in on you, Marth, she's going to escalate, you hit record. Then you don't engage. You don't yell back. You don't defend yourself. His eyes are steady on mine. You let her talk. The more she says, the better. She needs you to look unstable to make those commitment papers stick. The moment she's on tape threatening you, abusing you, making demands, we shift the narrative. From confused old woman to documented victim. To witness. He says it with emphasis. It's all about the evidence trail. A pause, and then the corner of his mouth moves, just slightly. Every mess leaves a trace. Right? My husband used to say that. I've said it myself more times than I can count. Ed must have heard it from me somewhere along the years and held on to it, the way good people hold on to the things that matter. I tap the red icon. Look at the small waveform pulse on the screen. Tap it again to stop. Good, Ed says. I tuck the phone back into my cardigan. Schmidt is still at my dining table when I come back inside, making a final notation on his form. He leaves 10 minutes later, briefcase snapped shut, with a smile that tells me everything I need to know about how the evaluation went. He shakes my hand at the door with the practiced warmth of a man who is certain he'll never have to answer for what he's done. I watch his car pull out of the driveway. Then Linda's car pulls in. She doesn't knock. She has a key, she always has had a key, and I gave it to her years ago with the uncomplicated trust of a mother. She opens the front door the way she opens everything lately, as if it were already hers. I hear her heels on the hardwood before I see her, and then she's in the kitchen doorway, a whirlwind of expensive fabric and barely contained frantic energy, her color high, her eyes bright with something that is not happiness. Where have you been? The words come out like accusations. Schmidt said you were incoherent. He said you wouldn't answer questions. I put my hand into my cardigan pocket. My thumb finds the phone. I press the red icon and feel the small vibration that tells me it's running. I was in the garden, I say, keeping my voice mild and slightly confused. The aphids. The garden. She says it like I've said something offensive. She comes further into the kitchen and the temperature in the room changes, not metaphorically, but actually, the way the atmosphere shifts when a door opens onto a cold day. She is running very hot. Her breath when she gets close to me carries the faint, sharp edge of gin. Mom. Her face is very close to mine now, and I can see the texture of her exhaustion, the fine lines around her eyes that expensive creams can't quite reach, the muscle working in her jaw. You're a selfish, stubborn old woman. Do you understand that? You're sitting on a gold mine while I am drowning. I keep my face soft. Confused. Uncertain. Sign the papers. Her voice drops to something low and ragged. Sign the goddamn papers or I will have the orderlies drag you out of here in zip ties. My thumb is on the phone in my pocket. Record. Every word she says is a gift I'm going to use to hang her. I am eating a piece of toast at 7 in the evening when the local news comes on the small television in the kitchen, the one I keep on the counter because my husband liked the evening news with dinner and the habit outlasted him. There is Sterling. I recognize him from across a room the way you recognize a smell that has never meant you well. Silver hair, well maintained. The blue eyes that photograph exceptionally and mean nothing. He's standing at a podium draped with the American flag, two of them, flanking, in the particular abundance of patriotic decoration that indicates a man who knows the camera is watching. His suit is dark navy, his pin is the small gold eagle, and his expression is the expression of a man who has practiced gravitas until it flows naturally. We owe everything to our seniors, he says. The anchor's Chiron reads, Senator Sterling praises local family. That's why I want to commend Linda Miller, a daughter who is showing us all what sacrificial care truly looks like. He pauses. The pause is perfectly calibrated. as Linda helps her ailing mother, Martha, through her final, difficult transition. I set my toast down. Her final, difficult transition. I am alive. I am standing in my kitchen. I am watching a United States Senator use my name to describe my erasure as an act of mercy, and the camera will cut to the anchor in a moment and the anchor will say something warm and validating, and tomorrow the people who know me will have watched it in their living rooms and updated their understanding of who I am. I watch myself be eulogized. I do not change my expression. The casserole brigade arrives at 9 the next morning. 3 of them, Brenda, Carol, and Diane, from St. Jude's, where I have attended the Tuesday prayer group for 16 years and organized the Veterans Day potluck for 11. Brenda is in front, holding a glass Pyrex dish with a dish towel wrapped around the base. They are all wearing the same expression. I don't have a word for it except mournful pity, the particular arrangement of features that accompanies a situation a person finds profoundly sad and expects to receive some personal credit for acknowledging. "Oh, Martha, honey." Brenda's voice is the voice of someone addressing a toddler or a very ill person, louder than necessary, slower than necessary, with the rounded enunciation of someone who suspects comprehension may be an issue. "Linda told us everything. It's so brave of you to accept help." They don't quite look at me. They look at the space around me, at the doorframe, at each other. Carol makes a small, expressive face in Diane's direction. Diane puts her hand on my arm, a soft, patting touch, the kind of touch you give something breakable, and says, "We're here for you, honey," in the same measured volume. I try to speak. I try to say, "I am fine. I am more fine than I have been in 40 years. I am angry and I am capable and I know exactly what is happening." But they are not listening. They are processing. They have arrived with a completed picture, Linda's picture, Sterling's picture, and they are fitting me into it in real time, recategorizing me from Martha to Martha's situation. The person they knew for 30 years is becoming an outline. The casserole is for the outline. I look at Brenda's kind, pitying face, and I understand, with the precision of a woman who has been invisible before, that I have just been made invisible in a new and more permanent way. "Thank you," I say softly. They pat my hands. They make the small sounds of people performing care. They leave the casserole on the counter and don't stay long. I wait until they've turned out of the driveway before I move to the living room window and pull the curtain back a careful inch. The black SUV is at the end of the cul-de-sac. Tinted windows. Engine running, I can see the faint exhaust in the cooling morning air. It's parked just past the third driveway from the corner, which is far enough to be technically on a public street and close enough to see my front door without adjustment. A small blue and gold bumper sticker catches the light on the tailgate. Sterling for Senate. They are not even trying to be subtle about it. I let the curtain fall back into place. They are waiting. That's what this is. The lockdown, the doctor, the broadcast, the casserole brigade, all of it is the same mechanism, the same pressure applied from multiple angles simultaneously to produce a single result: a woman who is publicly established as confused, socially isolated, financially immobilized, and under constant observation. A woman who has nowhere left to go and no one left to call. Then the van comes. And the mess gets swept away. I've been the cleaning woman long enough to know what sweeping up looks like from the inside. I walk back to my husband's study. The study is the room I change least. His books are still arranged the way he arranged them, military history, mostly, and law, and a shelf of paperback westerns he read every summer. His desk is the same rolltop I've refinished twice. The lamp with the green glass shade that he said looked like a proper lawyer's office even though he wasn't a lawyer, just a man who believed in doing things with some dignity. I pull the leather-bound manual from the second shelf, Military Law and Civil Rights. It's old, the spine cracked, the pages slightly foxed at the edges. He consulted it the year before he deployed, when there was a dispute about a neighbor's VA benefits. He underlined things in pencil, in his tight, deliberate hand. I sit in his chair and open it, and I read. I read for an hour. What I find is not comfort, exactly, but the particular clarity that comes from understanding the exact shape of the problem in front of you. Power of attorney strips a person of the legal standing to enter contracts, manage assets, or make decisions without the agent's approval. If Dr. Schmidt's evaluation is submitted and accepted, and if the commitment papers are processed, the window of time during which I can act as a legally recognized individual may be days. Hours, potentially, if Linda is moving as fast as Ed says she's moving. This is not a family dispute. It is a tactical annexation. I have been identified as an obstacle and the appropriate paperwork is being assembled to reclassify me as a dependent, a person who exists inside the system rather than as a participant in it. The moment that reclassification is complete, my signature means nothing, my testimony means nothing, and the Polaroid in the safety deposit box downtown can be disputed, decontextualized, and buried. I close the book. I look at the locket on the desk where I laid it while I was reading. The gold catches the green light from the shade. The small key inside presses its outline against the thin metal of the casing. I am a Gold Star widow. I spent 40 years cleaning up the messes of men like Sterling, men who built their power on the assumption that the people around them were either complicit or invisible, and that invisible people stay invisible. I pick up the locket. Clasp it back around my neck. I will not be erased. Not by the paperwork. Not by the casserole. Not by the black SUV idling at the end of my street. But I have to move before Friday. The kitchen timer is a small, white mechanical thing shaped like an egg. I've had it for 20 years. I wind it to 3 minutes and wedge it between the back of the toaster and the tile backsplash, deep enough that it won't slide, close enough that when it goes off the sound will carry through the window. Then I take a metal spoon from the utensil drawer, a heavy one, the kind made to last, and I shove it into the garbage disposal. I flip the switch. The sound is immediate and violent, a grinding metallic scream that climbs every octave at once, the kind of sound that does not allow you to ignore it, a machine in agony, a mechanical wail that tears through the quiet kitchen and out the window over the sink in a way I counted on. I don't wait to watch the effect. I'm already moving toward the basement door. I ease it shut behind me, descend the stairs in the dark with one hand on the railing and one outstretched for the string pull on the overhead bulb. I don't pull it. I know this basement in the dark the way I know my own hands, the water heater in the corner, the storage shelves along the left wall, the stacked boxes of my husband's things that I've never quite been able to distribute or discard. I navigate by memory and touch, moving toward the far wall, toward the hopper window that sits at ground level above the back flower bed. Through the small rectangle of glass, I can see a slice of the driveway and, beyond the hedge, the faint shape of the black SUV. Even as I watch, I see the heads of the two men inside swivel toward the kitchen window, the disposal sound reaching them, doing exactly what I needed it to do. The kitchen timer will go off in 2 minutes and 30 seconds. They will wait for the noise to resolve before they decide it's nothing. 2.5 minutes. I unlatch the hopper window. Push it open on its rusty hinge, wincing at the small squeal of it. The gap is not generous, maybe 14 inches of clearance, and I am 72 years old with arthritis in both hands and a dignity that, frankly, this moment is going to test. I get down on my hands and knees in the dirt of the basement floor. I taste copper and damp earth as I push my head and shoulders through the gap, feel the window frame scrape the back of my cardigan, pull my hips through with the specific indignity of a woman forcing her body through an opening designed for ventilation and not for escape. Something pulls at my hair. My left hip objects loudly. I get through. I am out. I am crouched in the narrow channel between the house foundation and the azalea bed, cold air on my face, the distant grinding of the disposal still audible through the kitchen wall. I don't stand. I stay low and move along the foundation toward the back corner of the house, then through the gap in the boxwood hedge into the alley. The timer goes off as I clear the hedge. A thin mechanical ring, barely audible from here. I don't look back. The alleys behind Millbrook Road were not designed to be pretty. They are the undersides of the neighborhood, the garbage bins and rusted fence gates and overgrown ivy that trails over chain link in shapes no one tends. I spent 40 years learning the undersides of places. I know how to move through them. I stick to the narrow lane, keeping the bins on my left as a screen. My arthritis announces itself in my hips with each step, a dull rhythmic ache that has been my companion for 8 years now and knows better than to expect sympathy. I breathe through it. The body makes its case, I note it and continue. My late husband walked 3 miles on a stress fracture he didn't know about for 6 weeks because there was a thing that needed doing. I think of him every time my body lodges a formal complaint. Through the park, behind the oaks. The sky is low and gray, the light flat, good weather for moving without being seen. I pause behind the largest oak and scan. No patrol car on the near path. No campaign stickers visible in the small lot off the south entrance. An elderly man with a terrier on a leash is moving away from me along the far path, oblivious. I move. The bank's limestone columns appear at the end of Aldermore Street with the clean, stable solidity of a building that has been there longer than most of what surrounds it. I stop at the corner to get my breath back, not dramatic, just necessary, the kind of stop a body asks for after covering 6 blocks at pace. I put one hand on the corner of a brick building and breathe. 60 seconds. Then I straighten, button the top button of my cardigan, and walk in. The lobby of Meridian Trust is cool and marble-floored, with the slight echo of a space designed to imply permanence. I know this lobby. I have been coming here for 23 years. I adopt the walk automatically, the one I learned in 40 years of other people's houses. Shoulders forward and down, eyes slightly lowered, movement purposeful but peripheral. Not invisible in a dramatic way. Invisible in the ordinary way, the way a woman my age and my style of dress becomes part of the background of a room when she doesn't announce herself. The lobby greeter, a young man in a bank-branded polo, glances up from his tablet for approximately 1 second and glances back down. To him, I am someone's grandmother, vaguely lost in the vicinity of the safety deposit vault. He does not recalibrate. I reach the vault teller window. The woman behind the glass is named Rosalie. We've exchanged Christmas greetings for 20 years. She looks up, and something moves across her face, recognition, and something else, something careful. I don't speak. I slide my ID through the slot in the glass. Then I unfasten the locket, and I slide that through as well. Rosalie looks at both for a moment. She looks up at me. I hold her gaze, steady and straight, my steel blue eyes doing what they do when I need someone to see me clearly. She picks up both items. She buzzes me through. My heart is hammering against my ribs like something that wants out. The vault is cold. Always cold, as if the temperature of the room is set to the temperature of the boxes themselves, each one holding something its owner considered too important to keep warm. My footsteps echo. Rosalie leads me to box 402 and leaves me, pulling the half-door closed behind her with the discretion of 20 years. My hands are trembling. Not from fear, or not only from fear, from the arithmetic of the moment. 23 years since I placed this in here. 23 years of paying the annual fee in cash from the grocery envelope. 23 years of walking past this vault knowing what was inside without needing to touch it. I built a life around this box and never opened it again because I hoped I would never need to. The locket key fits the lock the way it was always going to, precisely, without resistance, as if the metal remembered. 1/4 turn. A crisp, mechanical click that sounds enormous in the silence. I open the box. The Polaroid is on top, resting on a bed of yellowed envelopes. The colors have shifted over the decades, the warm tones faded, the shadows deeper than they should be, but the image is unmistakable. Sterling, 20 years younger, with the particular hunger of a man not yet finished becoming what he intended to become. Across from him, one hand extended in the handshake, a face I recognized the year I took the photo from the unlocked drawer in his study, a man whose name appeared twice in federal indictments the following decade, whose business had nothing to do with legitimate real estate and everything to do with what happens when the people who enforce the law decide to sell their services. The handshake. The site in the background, identifiable by the VA clinic's original cornerstone visible over Sterling's right shoulder. The transaction that was never meant to leave the shadows. I hold the photograph for a moment, careful, the surface slightly tacky with age, the edges curled. Then I tuck it against my skin, inside my brassiere, where the plastic corners find my ribs. Cold and present. Real. I reach back into the box. The envelope is heavy bond paper, blue, the kind used for legal documents. It has my name on the front in handwriting I know as well as my own, tighter than mine, more deliberate, the careful cursive of a man who wrote every letter as if it might be the last. I don't understand, at first, why I don't remember it. Then I do. I couldn't open everything the week of the funeral. There was too much paper. Too many forms. I must have put this in here with the other important documents and told myself I would return to it when I could breathe again. I never came back for it. I sit on the small bench in the vault and I read. It is an intent to bequeath, a legal framework document, drafted by two of my husband's old JAG colleagues whose names I recognize, establishing the mechanism by which our home property could be transferred to the Honor and Duty Veterans Land Trust in the event that the neighborhood came under predatory development pressure. He had seen it happening in other places, the slow cannibalization of working-class neighborhoods adjacent to VA facilities, the quiet rezoning, the displacement of the people who'd built their lives in proximity to the institutions that kept veterans in care. He knew. He knew the wolves would come eventually. He built a door before we needed it. The document isn't signed on my line. It requires my signature and a filing with the trust to become active. But the legal framework is already built. The contingency is already drafted. He didn't just want me to have the house. He wanted me to have the means to protect it from exactly this. I sit in the cold vault for a long moment with my husband's handwriting in my hands. I do not cry. I fold the document carefully, slide it into the inner pocket of my cardigan beside the burner phone, and stand up. I have a photograph. I have a shield. I have enough. The young man driving the delivery truck has a Support Our Troops hat and the easy generosity of someone who hasn't yet learned to be suspicious of old women standing on street corners. He doesn't ask questions. He drops me a block from Millbrook Road with a cheerful, "Have a good one, ma'am," and pulls away. I round the corner. My blood goes cold. My front door is standing open, not ajar, not cracked, but swinging freely in the breeze, making a slow pendulum arc against the frame. The neighbor's golden retriever from 2 houses down is standing on my lawn with his tail rigid, barking at the open doorway with the committed alarm of an animal that knows something is wrong but not what. The silence coming from inside the house is louder than the barking. I stop on the sidewalk. I look. I look the way I have always looked at the threshold of a room I'm about to enter, reading it before I'm in it, the way you read the surface before you put your weight on it. Then I walk up my front path and go inside. My knees nearly give. The house has been turned inside out. The hallway runner is bunched against the baseboard. My husband's mahogany desk, the roll top I refinished twice, the one he spent 20 years writing letters home from, is overturned in the study doorway, the drawers splintered out of their guides, the contents scattered across the floor in a radius of papers and pens and the small things a man accumulates over a lifetime. The letters. 40 years of letters. His handwriting, my handwriting, the handwriting of people who loved us. Every envelope I kept, every folded page, the correspondence of a marriage that survived deployment and distance and death and continued in some form even after he was gone, all of it shredded into white confetti that covers the hallway floor like the aftermath of a celebration for something wrong. My African violets, the ones I've cultivated since 1994, the ones that have won the St. Jude Spring Show 4 times, are crushed into the carpet in the living room. The soil spread in dark, damp patches across the cream-colored fibers. The smell is wrong. The lemon wax smell that has been the smell of this house for as long as I can remember is gone, replaced by the sharp, acrid bite of ozone and something underneath it, the raw heat of desperation, the smell that comes off a person who has been afraid for a long time and has stopped caring about the damage they leave. Linda didn't search my house. She tried to erase my history. I stand in the ruin of my hallway and I feel the grief move through me, clean and enormous and specific. Not general grief. The grief of these particular letters, this particular desk, these particular violets. I feel it move through me the way a wave moves through, real, physical, total. And then it passes. And I am still standing. Where is it? She comes out of the bedroom doorway like something that has been waiting and can't wait anymore, hair destroyed, the expensive bob in disarray, suit jacket stained with sweat at the underarms and down the center back. She looks feral. There is no other word for it. Her eyes go immediately to my hands, my pockets, my throat, moving fast and hungry. I know you have it. Her voice has gone rough, the professional lilt completely gone. I checked the deposit records. You went to the bank, Mom. I know you went to that bank. She crosses the distance between us in 3 steps and her hands come up reaching for the locket. I step back. My spine finds the doorframe. Her fingers are at my collar, at the chain, and I feel the cold metal pull tight against the back of my neck before I turn my shoulder into her and break the angle of her reach. She doesn't get the locket. She stumbles slightly, catches herself on the wall, and for 1 second we are both perfectly still, my daughter and I, in the wreckage of my hallway, looking at each other. I look at her face. I remember the face she made when she was 5 years old and I wouldn't let her have a second piece of birthday cake. The lower lip. The indignation of a child who believes the universe is being unreasonable. I look for it now. It isn't there. The daughter I raised is gone. What stands in front of me has her eyes and her bone structure and nothing else I recognize. The yellow light comes first, rhythmic pulses cutting through the front windows, strobing across the ruined hallway floor. I look past Linda's shoulder. Through the open front door, a white transport van is pulling into my driveway. Slow, deliberate. The logo on the side is visible even from here, Clearwater Memory Care, in clean blue letters above a stylized lighthouse graphic. The lighthouse. The irony is almost too much to hold. The engine idles. It has the low, patient hum of something that is going nowhere because it does not need to hurry. It has already arrived. The driver stays behind the wheel. I understand the architecture of this moment with complete clarity. Strip the house, find the evidence, remove the witness. I am the witness. The van is the final step in a plan that has been running for weeks, maybe months, and every piece of it has been designed around the assumption that by the time the van arrived I would be too isolated, too legally compromised, and too frightened to do anything but comply. They were not entirely wrong about the fear. But they miscalculated the rest. Linda's voice drops. The screaming is gone, replaced by something worse, a jagged, stripped-down quiet that carries its own kind of violence. Sterling bought your debt, Mom. She smooths her jacket with both hands, an absurd gesture of composure in the context of everything around us. Or rather, he bought mine. 200,000 in markers from Atlantic City. All I had to do was hand him the house. A pause. And put you somewhere safe. She holds up a sheaf of papers. I recognize the format, the clinical header, the signature lines, the specific typography of commitment documents. Schmidt signed them an hour ago. Her mouth shapes something that is technically a smile. You're legally incompetent as of 10 minutes ago. You don't own a chair in this house anymore. I look at her face while she says this. I look at the particular expression of a woman who has been carrying an unbearable weight for a long time and has just put it down, and doesn't yet realize what she's put it down in front of. She thinks she has won. I do not correct her. Not yet. The two men in white scrubs come through the open front door with the quiet efficiency of people who have been through this particular doorway before, in other houses, with other women. Thick-necked, impassive, wearing the careful blankness of men hired to perform a task and not to ask what it means. They move to either side of the hallway, flanking me with a practiced geometry that leaves me no obvious direction of exit. Easy now, Martha. The one on my left has a voice designed to be calming and lands as condescending in the same breath. Let's make this a smooth transition. Their shadows fall across me. Cold and heavy, the way I imagine the shadow of a building falling across a garden. I look at the man on my left. I look at the man on my right. I look at my daughter, who has moved back toward the wall to make room for the professionals. I look at the open front door. And I think of the Polaroid against my ribs and the land trust document in my pocket and the recording on the burner phone and the unsigned line on my husband's bequest that is still, for some number of additional minutes, mine to sign. If I go into that van, I die in a locked ward. Not literally, not tonight, but effectively. I become a name on a wristband and a voice that no one has to take seriously, and the recording and the photograph and the land trust document will be found in my cardigan and confiscated and explained away, and Sterling will stand at another podium and call it care, and the VA clinic will be rubble by Christmas. If I fight here, I am exactly what the papers say I am. Schmidt wins. I need a crowd. I need witnesses. I need the cameras Sterling loves so much, and I need them pointed in the right direction. I look at Linda. She is watching me with the expression of a woman braced for screaming or struggle, already composing the notes she'll give Schmidt in the morning. She does not expect what I actually do. I stop. I stand very still in the ruined hallway of my home, between the man on my left and the man on my right, and I let my shoulders drop by exactly 1 degree. I look at my daughter the way I have always looked at difficult rooms, clearly, without drama, with the steady assessment of a woman who has cleaned up worse than this. I'll sign the house over, I say. My voice is level and cold, the coldness of a winter creek, clear all the way to the bottom. Quietly. No trouble. Linda blinks. But I want one last night of dignity. I hold her gaze. Take me to the fundraiser. The orderlies are patient men. They can afford to be, the van is in the driveway, the papers are signed, and in their experience the part where the person finally accepts it always comes. They stand in my hallway breathing steadily, waiting. Linda is looking at me with the particular expression of someone running a calculation. I make my voice tremble. Just slightly, not theatrical, just the fine vibration of a woman at her limit, a woman who has fought and found the wall and understands, finally, that the wall is real. I've seen that surrender in other women's faces. I know the precise texture of it. You want the title, Linda? I look at her with eyes I allow to go wet at the rims. You want the house? She doesn't answer. She watches. I'll sign the deed tonight. No lawyers. No fight. I let my chin drop for a moment, then bring it back up, the gesture of someone reaching for the last of their dignity. But I won't be dragged out of my home like a dog. Let me attend the fundraiser. Let me say goodbye to my community with my head held high. I pause. You get your money. You get the title. And you get your devoted daughter photo op with the senator in front of the cameras. I look at her steadily. One last hour. That's all I'm asking. I watch it move through her, the caution on one side, the greed on the other, the mental arithmetic of a woman who has been running numbers her whole life and can't stop now. The greed is heavier. The greed has always been heavier, or we wouldn't be standing in this hallway. She nods. 1 hour, she says. Then you sign. Linda lets me freshen up. This is a concession she makes because she needs me presentable for the cameras. A composed elderly woman on the arm of her devoted daughter is the visual Sterling needs, and she knows it. She tells one of the orderlies to wait by the front door and takes the other one with her to the kitchen to call the senator's coordinator. 3 minutes. Maybe 4. I move to the side door, the one off the mudroom, the one that opens onto the narrow strip of yard between the house and the azalea hedge. I ease it open. The night air hits me, cool and damp, carrying the smell of late-season earth and the boxwood I planted 20 years ago along the fence line. Ed is there. He's standing in the darkness between the azalea and the fence, dressed in dark colors, his stocky frame absolutely still in the way of a man who spent decades learning to be still when stillness was required. He sees me and moves forward without a word. I reach into my cardigan and pull out the blue bond envelope, my husband's document, the land trust framework, the contingency he built before either of us knew what it was a contingency for. I press it into Ed's hands. The land trust papers. I keep my voice below a breath. My husband's JAG contacts, you have their numbers. The county clerk has a late filing window until 9. It has to be tonight, Ed. Before I sign anything. He looks down at the envelope, then up at me. His face in the dark is the face of a soldier who has received orders and is already computing the route. I've got it, Martha. His voice is gravel and granite. You just hold that line. He folds the envelope into his vest pocket and moves along the fence line and into the dark without another sound. I stand alone in the side yard for 10 seconds. Then I go back inside and face the mirror in the hall bathroom. My silver hair is mostly in order. I smooth it with my hands, tuck one loose strand back into the feathered cut. I straighten my collar. I unfasten the gold star brooch from my coat lapel, I've kept it in the inside pocket since morning, and pin it to the outside, centered, where it can be seen. My husband's gold on my coat. My hands, when I fasten the clasp, are terrifyingly steady. The fundraiser is being held in the Aldermore Civic Hall, which I have cleaned 6 times over the course of my working life and which smells tonight, under the catering and the flowers and the expensive perfumes of 200 guests, exactly as it always has, like old marble and floor wax and the specific institutional cleanliness of a room that has been scrubbed by people whose names no one learns. I know this building in my bones. Linda grips my arm as we come through the main entrance, her fingers a shackle disguised as support, the grip of a woman steering a prop. The room is a sea of rented tuxedos and champagne flutes and the kind of practiced social animation that people perform when they are aware of being observed. Seared scallops and heavy lilies in the catering smell, the lilies especially, too many of them, the sweetness tipping into something that coats the back of the throat. Doesn't she look lovely? Linda chirps to a local councilman as we pass, her voice at the exact pitch of a woman performing warmth for an audience. She squeezes my arm. I keep my gaze slightly downcast, my posture gentle and uncertain, my silver hair neat over the collar of my coat. I am the ailing mother. The prop. The human interest footnote of a senator's campaign event. Beneath my coat, the burner phone is warm against my ribs. The Polaroid presses its edges into my skin. I move through the room like I have always moved through the rooms of the powerful. Like I was never there. The cameras are already on when Sterling takes the podium. I count 4 news crews, the local affiliate, the regional cable channel, 2 others I don't immediately recognize. Their red recording lights glow in the dimness of the hall's far edges like the eyes of animals waiting at the tree line. Sterling knows exactly where each one is. He steps to the microphone with the ease of a man who has spent 30 years learning to be his own best visual, and the hall quiets with the particular deference of a crowd that has already decided he deserves their attention. He is magnificent in the way that empty vessels are magnificent when the light hits them right. Silver hair, navy suit, the small gold eagle pin catching the spotlight. His voice fills the hall from the diaphragm. "We are here for the veterans," he says. I am standing in the wings, at the edge of the stage curtain, Linda a few yards behind me now, engaged with a donor who has taken her attention for a moment in the way that donors tend to do. I watch Sterling's face in the glow of the news cameras. And we are here for families like the Millers. He pauses, the calibrated pause, the one that tells the room to feel something. Martha Miller, whose husband gave everything for this country, is now facing her own battle. And her daughter Linda is showing us the true meaning of service. He uses my husband's name with the smooth authority of a man who has never once thought about what my husband actually was or what the service actually cost. The hypocrisy is a physical heat in my chest. I stand with it. I let it burn. I wait for Linda to move further into the donor conversation. Then I slip behind the curtain. The service corridors of Aldermore Civic Hall run along the east wall behind the stage, a narrow passage of painted cinder block and bundled cable and institutional lighting that the evening's guests will never see. I cleaned these corridors 4 times. I know where the AV booth is, second door past the breaker panel, marked with a small laminated sign. I move through the dark passage with my hand tracing the wall, my footsteps deliberate and quiet. No shuffling, no hesitation. This is not an elderly woman navigating an unfamiliar space. This is 40 years of knowing how buildings work from the inside out. The AV booth door is unlocked. I ease it open. The booth is a small alcove, warm with the heat of running equipment, crowded with monitors and cable runs and a professional soundboard that takes up most of the desk surface. A young technician in a headset sits with his back to the door, leaning toward a lighting monitor that is showing some kind of flicker in the rigging above the stage. He's muttering to himself, focused entirely on the problem in front of him. He does not hear me come in. I scan the soundboard. Ed described it to me 3 days ago, in the back garden, while the black SUV sat at the end of the cul-de-sac, standard auxiliary input, right side of the board, below the main fader banks, labeled line in. I find it in 4 seconds, a row of 1/4" and 3.5 mm jacks, clearly labeled, the auxiliary channels fader sitting at neutral. I reach into my coat. My hands are stiff with arthritis. They are always stiff in the evenings, when the temperature drops and the joints have been in use all day. I feel the particular resistance of fingers that have earned their limitations honestly. I work with them anyway, carefully, precisely, the way you work with any tool that has wear on it but still functions. I find the burner phone. I find the 3.5 mm cable I asked Ed to tape to the back of the phone 3 days ago. I fit the jack into the line in port. The technician's shoulder moves. He shifts in his chair, reaching for something on the desk. I go absolutely still. He picks up a pen. Makes a notation on a clipboard. Turns back to the flickering monitor. I breathe. I navigate to the voice memo app with my thumb, feeling rather than looking at the screen, keeping my eyes on the technician's back. The recording is there, Linda's voice, raw and stripped of every pretense, the kitchen confrontation in its entirety. I find the beginning of the section I need, "You're a selfish, stubborn old woman, Mom." I press the screen twice to set the start point. Then I reach for the auxiliary channel fader and bring it up to 3/4. Sterling's voice is still coming through the monitors. I watch the levels. I wait. He is building to it. I can hear the shape of the speech in his cadence, the way a preacher's voice climbs as he approaches the altar call. The room beyond the curtain is wrapped. The cameras are steady on him. A future built on the foundations of respect and I hit play. I push the fader to full. The effect is immediate and total. Linda's voice, amplified, distorted slightly by the years-old recording quality of the burner phone, but unmistakably Linda, unmistakably furious, unmistakably specific, erupts through the hall speakers with the force of something that has been contained too long. "You're a selfish, stubborn old woman, Mom. You're sitting on a gold mine while I am drowning." Sterling's voice stops. The champagne flutes stop. "Sterling bought your debt, Mom. $200,000 in markers from Atlantic City. All I had to do was hand him the house. The marble walls of Aldermore Civic Hall do exactly what marble walls do. They hold the sound and return it, amplified, from every direction simultaneously. Linda's voice bounces off the ceiling, off the floors, off the faces of 200 people in evening wear who have just had the social contract of the evening shattered in a way they will describe to other people for the rest of their lives. The news cameras pivot. The red lights stay on. I step out from behind the curtain. The spotlights find me before I find them, a blast of white heat that wipes out the middle distance and turns the audience into shapes and silhouettes. I walk into it directly, without flinching, and I do not hunch. I straighten. I stand as straight as my 72-year-old spine will allow, which is straighter than most people would expect, because I have kept this body in working order out of the same discipline that kept everything else in my life in working order. My chin is level. My shoulders are square. The gold star brooch catches the spotlight on my lapel. The recording continues to play. Put you somewhere safe. The commitment papers are signed. You don't own a chair in this house anymore. I walk to the microphone. Sterling is standing 6 feet away from me. His mouth is open. He has the look of a man whose machinery has encountered something it was not designed to process, the silver-haired composure entirely absent, what's underneath it not quite human in the way that exposed wiring is not quite a lamp. He looks at me the way he looked at the cleaning woman 40 years ago, when she came back to work on a Monday, not seeing me. Seeing an inconvenience that should not exist in this configuration. I look at him the way I look at a room that needs cleaning. I see everything. Linda is in the front row, frozen in the posture of a woman who has just watched her entire structure come down simultaneously. She is pale in a way that the tan foundation cannot cover. She does not speak. I turn to Sterling's microphone and I speak into it clearly, in the deliberate cadence of a woman who has chosen every word in advance. Every mess leaves a trace, Senator. The hall is absolutely silent except for the recording still playing through the speakers. I turn to face the cameras directly. My steel blue eyes find the nearest lens and I let them find it, steady, clear, the look of a woman who has been waiting for this specific moment for longer than most people in this room have been alive in any meaningful sense. My daughter promised you my home, Senator. I reach into my coat pocket. But she's been selling something she doesn't own. I unfold the document and hold it up, not theatrically, not for effect, but the way you hold up evidence, level, legible, available to be seen. It is the time-stamped receipt from the county clerk's late filing office, time-stamped 7:15 p.m., bearing the seal of the Honor and Duty Veterans Land Trust and the legal description of my property on Millbrook Road. Ed made it. He held that line. As of 7:15 tonight, this house and the land it sits on have been deeded to the Honor and Duty Veterans Land Trust. My voice carries through the microphone without effort, without strain. It is a permanent sanctuary for those who served. It cannot be sold, seized, or transferred by any power of attorney. I look at Sterling. Linda's papers are a worthless scrap of paper. And your high-rise is a dead dream. The silence in the hall is the specific silence of a large group of people processing something that has rearranged the evening entirely. Then the sound comes back all at once, voices, movement, the scrape of chairs, the directed shouts of journalists who have been at events like this long enough to know when to move. I step to the edge of the stage. She's in the front row, right where I expected her, the lead investigative reporter from the regional affiliate, a woman I've seen on my television screen enough times to know her face. She's already standing. Her camera operator is already moving for angle. She looks up at me with the focused attention of someone who knows they are standing inside a story. I reach into my coat. The Polaroid has been against my skin for hours. I pull it out carefully, the edges still slightly curled, the colors still faded in the particular way of old instant photography, and I hold it down to her. The reason the senator was so eager to silence me, I say. She takes it. She looks at it. Something moves across her face, the professional composure of a good journalist held tight over the unmistakable response of a person who has just been handed exactly what they needed. "Is this authenticated?" she asks, looking up. "The man on the left has been federally indicted twice," I say. The cornerstone in the background is the original VA clinic cornerstone. "Sterling knows what it is. Ask him." She looks back at the photo. The flashbulbs start. One, then three, then a cascade, a strobing, blinding white that pops across the hall in rapid succession as the photographers find their angles and the story arranges itself into images that will run in print and online before midnight. I watch it happen. The death of a career, in the time it takes for a flash to fire. The hall comes apart at the seams. Sterling is swarmed within 30 seconds, reporters moving in from 3 directions, microphones extending, the questions arriving faster than answers can be formed. His coordinator tries to intervene, putting herself between him and the nearest camera with the look of a woman who has done this before and is discovering that this time is different. His composure is completely gone. What's underneath it is not what his 30 years of public life were designed to show anyone, and the cameras see all of it. 2 uniformed officers move through the crowd toward Linda. She sees them coming. She looks at me across the hall, across the space between us, across the wreckage of the evening and the rubble of what she built, and for 1 second, just one, I see her face change. The feral calculation drops. The greed drops. What's underneath is not the face of a predator. It's the face of a woman who has been afraid for a very long time and has run out of road. I held that face when it was 5 years old during summer thunderstorms. I know its architecture in my bones. The grief comes. I don't try to stop it this time. I let it move through me, real, specific, the grief of a mother for a daughter who made choices that led here, the grief of a woman who held this child and could not hold her from this. I feel it completely. The handcuffs close over Linda's wrists with a sound that is small and final and carries across the sudden quiet near the front of the room. She doesn't look at me again. The grief is real. And beside it, pressing against it, solid and unmovable, is the cold weight of justice. I hold both. They are both true. I have learned, in 72 years, that the truest things are usually 2 things at once. The neighborhood is quiet in the particular way it gets in the week after something large has passed through it. Not the pressurized quiet of surveillance and waiting, the other kind. The quiet that means the weather has changed and will not be changing back. I am sitting on my front porch. The morning came cold and clear, the sky that specific shade of pale blue that shows up in late autumn when the air has finally rinsed itself clean. The roses along the front walk need cutting back. I'll do that tomorrow, or the day after, when my hands have rested. The flower beds along the south fence are going to need replanting in spring. New African violets started from cuttings, which is more work but also more satisfying than simply buying replacements. Every mess leaves a trace. But you can also clean the mess, if you're patient enough and know where to start. Ed is in the wicker chair beside me. He arrived this morning with 2 mugs of Earl Grey. He's learned how I take it over 11 years of neighboring, and settled into the chair with the easy permanence of a man who knows he's welcome. He hasn't said much. Neither have I. We've been sitting here for 40 minutes in the comfortable quiet of people who don't need to narrate things for each other. Across the yard, a workman in a gray jacket is finishing the installation of the bronze plaque on the siding of my house. The plaque is rectangular, about the size of a hardback book, with the trust's insignia embossed at the top, an eagle over a house over the words honor and duty. Below it, the address. Below that, Veterans Land Trust. Protected in perpetuity. The workman steps back and checks his level. Adjusts the right side by a fraction. Steps back again. He nods to himself. I watch the bronze catch the morning light. My husband built the framework for this before I knew I would need it. He was always doing that, building the contingency before the weather turned, fitting the peg before the board needed to hold. He believed in preparation the way some people believe in prayer, which is to say completely and practically and without requiring the weather to cooperate. I think of him the way I always think of him, not with the specific sharp grief of early loss, but with the quiet, present knowledge of a person who has been part of you long enough that they don't fully leave. He is in this house. He is in the letters, the ones that survived, which is most of them, the shredding having been worse in one room than another. He is in the contingency he left me, which became the shield I needed, which is now bolted in bronze to the siding of our home. He knew the wolves would come. He made sure I had what I needed when they did. Ed picks up his mug. Takes a slow sip. Sets it back down on the table between us. Schmidt's license is under review, he says, without preamble, in the manner of a man delivering a status update. 2 prior complaints surfaced once the attorneys started pulling records. The commitment papers are void. A pause. Sterling's coordinator is cooperating with the DA in exchange for a reduced charge. They're saying it's enough to indict. I nod. Linda's attorney filed for a continuance, he adds. But with the recording and the brokerage records, there isn't much to work with. He looks at me sideways, not pitying, just checking, the way a good neighbor does. She'll likely plead. I look at the bronze plaque on my siding. I think of Linda's face when the handcuffs closed. The fear under the greed, under the desperation, under all of it, the face of a woman who made choices that compounded and compounded until they became a wall with no doors. I made choices too. Different ones, with different results. I don't know, entirely, where the divergence was. I have turned it over in the weeks since and I don't have a clean answer. People don't usually diverge cleanly. She'll be all right, I say. Not because I'm certain, but because I need it to be true, and saying it makes it fractionally more possible. Eventually. Ed doesn't argue. He understands the difference between a statement of fact and a statement of intent. We sit in the quiet. The workman packs his tools into a canvas bag and tips his hat in my direction. I raise my hand to him. He heads down the front walk, his footsteps fading. The bronze plaque is on my house. My husband's contingency is in effect. The VA clinic will stand. I pick up my mug of Earl Grey. The warmth of it moves into my calloused hands, into the arthritis in my knuckles, into the small ache that lives in the left palm where the scar is. I take a slow, deliberate sip. The tea is exactly right. The neighborhood stretches out in front of me, the oaks along Millbrook Road in the last of their autumn color, the houses I have watched through 40 years of seasons, the sidewalk where the morning light falls in the particular slanted angle of late October. A world that has rearranged itself around the weight of what just happened and will keep going, as worlds do, into whatever comes next. Somewhere in that world, in a newsroom or a courtroom or a county clerk's office, the trace of the mess is being examined, documented, and made permanent. The way all traces eventually are, if someone cares enough to look for them. I looked. I have always looked. I set my mug down on the table with the small, certain sound of a thing placed exactly where it belongs, and I watched the sun move over a neighborhood that is finally safe from the people I used to clean up after. The air smells of rain coming and Earl Grey and the last of the autumn roses. I am here. If you made it to this moment, thank you for listening all the way through. Most people bail before the bill comes due. But here, the bill always comes due. What started as humiliation and disrespect ended with receipts, truth, and a payoff they never saw coming. If you want more stories where karma shows up without mercy, hit subscribe and come back for the next one. Now tell me in the comments, what was the most disgusting thing they did? What crossed the line for you?